myself. I'm Bella, your master ceremony for today's event. Welcome to the webinar hosted by Postgraduate English Education of Universitas Pattimura under the theme Developing Students' Online Autonomous Learning Capacity During COVID-19 Pandemic.
Kenapa? Cendengan.
Her Excellency, the Director of Postgraduate Program, Universitas Pattimura, Profesor Dr. Insinyur A.S.W. Letraubun MSc, the Honorable Head of Postgraduate English Education, Dr. Karolis Anastototi MA, all the lecturers of Universitas Pattimura, a very warm welcome for respected invited speakers, Mr. Made Heri Santosa, PhD, Dr. Henrik J. Marnaya, MED, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. Agenda. To begin our event, I would like to invite all participants to sing Indonesian national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, in this opportunity, before we come to the next agenda, I would like to invite you all to take a silent moment to pray. Ladies and gentlemen, with all the respect, we would like to invite the Director of Postgraduate Program, Universitas Pattimura, Professor Dr. Insinyur A.S.W. Letraubun MSc, to deliver an opening speech at once officially open this webinar. The time is yours.
Sorry.
My dear, sorry.
Thank you very much, MC. Excellency Head of English Education Study Program, all speakers, in this case, Pamade Heri Santosa, PhD, the Head of Online Learning Center of University Pendidikan Indonesia, and also Dr. Henry Marwanaya, MEd, a lecturer in postgraduate English education in Pattimura University, all the participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank English Education Study Program for the initiation to conduct this webinar with the theme Developing Students' Online Autonomous Learning Capacity During COVID-19 Pandemic. As we all know, in the early time of this year, the education world experienced unexpected shock due to pandemic of COVID-19, including Indonesia. At the time, majority of universities in Indonesia preparing themselves to enter new semester. Suddenly, virus infection enter our nation with a high rate and still exists until now. Due to the threat of COVID-19, colleges and universities are facing decisions about how to continue teaching and learning while keeping their faculty, institution, staff, and students safe from a public health emergency that is moving fast and not well understood. Many institutions have opted to cancel all face-to-face classes, including labs and other learning experience, and have mandated that faculty or institution or university move their course online to help prevent the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. The list of institutions of higher education making this decision has been growing so fast. Institutions of all size and type, state colleges and university, community college and others are moving their classes online. In Indonesia, as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, central government has established policy to change learning system from face-to-face or blended course to a fully online environment. This change is often called emergency remote teaching, which has a number of characteristics as we see up to now in Indonesia. Less time for planning and course development because of the emergency. Assistance to design and facilitate instruction may be limited at the time, and maybe we still feel it up to now. Support system for universities and students may be limited or even unavailable. Not all universities will be comfortable teaching in the online format. I think within our university, the older lecturer, they still have problem how to adapt the technology to deliver their lecture. Time may be limited for ensuring quality measure for design and teaching. It seems to me that we are in the process of moving from emergency remote teaching to a fully online environment if COVID-19 still far from memory. The above reality makes university has to prepare all needs to make sure that online education fulfill optimal target atau optimal online learning. Online education, as we know, it's including online teaching and learning. I think the theme of the present webinar tend to focus on student rather than lecturer, and it is an initiative that highly appreciated. So I think this webinar will provoke student in Unpati to realize that they have to have their own strategy to adapt themselves to learn within this system. Mm. And so I think the initiative to do this webinar is highly appreciated. I hope all participants have positive response to all material presented by both speakers. And so I formally open this webinar in the name of God, and I I think this webinar will deliver the message to all the participants. That's my speech, and I hope everybody will understand how urgently this seminar or this webinar is conducted. Thank you very much. I hand over the time back to the MC.
Thank you so much, Professor Retrabun, for the opening speech at once officially open this webinar. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, we would like to introduce you to the Code of Conduct for this webinar. Code of Conduct. The participants are required to take part in the meeting according to the Code of Conduct as follows. First, Zoom access will be open 15 minutes before the event starts. Second, the participant's ID must be their real name. Third, the participants must wear proper dress. Fourth, the participants must turn on their video during the meeting. Fifth, during the meeting, the participants' audio must be muted. Six, for participants that want to ask the question, they are allowed to type in the chat. The question's format is name, asking, and speaker's name, followed by their question. For example, Henry Latuheru asking Mr. Santosa, what about the blah blah blah? Seventh, the certificate is only delivered for those who registered and attend the event from the first to the end. Eighth, at the first and the last 30 minutes of the meeting, the attendance list in Google Form will be given through the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity, with all the respect, we'll move to the core of the agenda, parallel session. From this place and time, I would like to invite the moderator of the webinar to take this time opportunity, the moderator Henry Latuheru. The time is yours.
Thank you very much, Bella, and good morning to Mr. Madi, and good afternoon for the rest of participants. Mr. Director of Postgraduate Study Program, Prof. Retraubun. On today's occasions, before we start our session, or for the first sessions of this webinar, allow me to introduce our first speaker that will be presenting his material for this occasions. The first is Mr. Madi Heri Santosa, PhD. Mr. Madi, Mr. Madi, his educational background is for a Doctor of Philosophy, graduated from La Trobe University in 2013. His concerns and research covers EFL, call, e-learning, innovative pedagogies, learning technologies, and learning autonomy. Mr. Madi also have been working as a lecturer and researcher at Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha in Bali, Indonesia. He had been working also as head of online learning center in Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, starting from January 2020 until present, editor-in-chief for Journal of Society and Humanities, and also as the core skill reading training for British Council from 2016 until present. Several international awards have also been acquired by Mr. Santoso. For example, European Research Council from Radboud University in 2019, Camp TESOL ASEAN Research in 2019, and Camp TESOL General Research in 2018. And therefore, there is a short introduction about our first panelist, Dr. Mr. Santoso. We can see from this brief introduction that Mr. Santoso has been very well experienced in terms of educations and teachings, in terms of English and how it related to technologies and technology integrations and teachings. And without further ado, let me welcome Prof. Santosa for presenting his material for us in this afternoon.
Thank you, Pak Henry Latuheru, for the brief introduction. Really appreciate it. Can you hear my voice clearly? Hello?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Prof.
sir. Very, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Prof. Alex Retrobun, the Director of Postgraduate Program of Universitas Pattimura, Pak Dr. Karolis Anaktototi, the Head of English Department of Postgraduate, Dr. Hendrik Marwanaya, colleague and friend, Ibu Jenny Leka Tompesi, my good friend, and also family, also everyone, Ibu Bapak, mungkin ada mahasiswa juga di sini ya. Good morning from me, good afternoon for you, I think, because it's a different time zone. Director and everyone, I would like to say thank you for the invitation. It is an honor for me to share, not to teach you, but to share and discuss about a very important issue, if I can say, regarding with what happens today in our learning. So allow me to share my screen and tell me if you can see it clearly. Pak Henry, can you see my screen clearly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, very clear.
Thank you very much. I have also sent the material in PDF compressed platform to Pak Carol yesterday. So basically it is the same, but it is not animated, that's all. Yeah. Right. So I was given this topic. So basically it's looking at how you can encourage students' autonomous learning capacity in online learning that happens today. My name is Made Santosa. You can call me Made or Harry. I'm from Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia in Bali, to be exact in North Bali, like 3 hours from the airport. This is my email. If you need to contact me later on, just don't hesitate to contact me. I will reply to you. Besides I'm teaching in Undiksha, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, I'm also work and help and contribute in many institutions and associations. In Bali, I have an NGO that I run to help disadvantaged kids all through Bali in remote areas. It's called Bali Edukasi. I also help teachers using smart guru portals, and also I help younger generation in Bali especially to go to study abroad by Komunitas Pejuang Beasiswa Bali. Ibu Renata just now mentioned in chat system ITEL. ITEL stands for Indonesian Technology Enhanced Language Learning Association. So it is an association for any lecturers and teachers who are passionate and also encouraged to teach using technologies, to teach languages, to be exact. I'm one of the board of directors today. So if you want to collaborate with us, it is a pleasure. Apart from that, I'm also running a startup, let's say company called Susila Landharma, SLD. At the moment, I already developed some Android applications that I put for free in Google Android, Google Play. Yeah, but also I develop books and programs, applications, and also normally learning activities. Apart from that, before that, I also developed an application to look for part-time teachers, just like Gojek and Grab, yeah, where students can do private teachings, looking for teachers based on their locations, just like Gojek. And the last, I'm helping now in Indonesia Extensive Reading Association, IRA, in Indonesia, as the Director of Community Service. So apart from all those things, I'm also like to do gardening and also listening to music. Right. So Ibu Bapak, today's outline is very simple. Actually, I'm going to share with you because I'm given only like 1 hour and I'm doing my best. I'm going to share what happens today in our learning context and how do you promote autonomous learning in this context and what is meant by new learning, and at last I'm going to sum up everything. Right, before we begin, Ibu Bapak, I would like you to go to menti.com and insert this code, please, 653082 and 5. So I'm going to put it in the chat box system, menti.com, and then the code is 653082 and 5. 653082 and 5. Right. So please go to that using your laptop. If you are using laptop in another tab, or if you are using smartphone with you, you can do browser there and then open menti.com and then put the code. There will be 2 questions that I will give as a start. I will show you the result after 1 minute when everybody is ready to that. Is it clear, Pak Henry, as the moderator and everyone?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Right, so I'm going to show you the result now. So go to menti.com and then put the code 65 without space, yeah? 6530825, no space. And then please answer the question there. The first question is, which learning strategy do you employ during learning in the pandemic time? For example, discussion. For example, test, and so on and so on. You are given 3 opportunities to respond to that multiple times. Okay. Any responses? I'm waiting here. Thank you. Watching videos. Good. Discussion. Games. Thank you. So this is a live polling, yeah? So we will see later which one is the biggest, meaning that is the most strategy that you are employing at the moment, if you are a teacher especially. Right. Boring. Is that a strategy? Yes, could be. Boring. And then discussion seems to be dominant, yeah? We have like 15 responses at the moment. We have like 77 people here, participants here. So I will be waiting for about 2 minutes for this response. Right, thank you, 24. Maybe we wait until reaching 30 or even more responses. Right, discussion seems to be number 1 here. Of course, later the question is, how do you promote autonomous learning in discussion? Mungkin Ibu Bapak sudah coba diskusi, tapi nggak ngomong mahasiswanya atau muridnya kan gitu. Konteksnya nanti. Thank you. So I will wait for 1 more minute before going to the second question. Thank you. So thank you. We have reached 30 responses. I really appreciate that one. Some of you probably need some time to go here. So we can get the general, what is that, impression or response from you, from Unpati. Nah, ini kan jawaban dari teman-teman di Unpati ya. Basically or mostly that you do discussion. Some others include quiz, watching YouTube, games, presentation, self-learning, gamification, and so on. Thank you very much. So I will go to the next slide now, and please respond to the next question. Yes, the second question is that you will see in your gadgets also now. What challenges do you encounter in the learning process during the pandemic? For example, boring. For example, passive students, and so on and so on. All right, I'm to respond. Yes, signal, of course. Too many assignments if you are. Ini jawabannya pasti dari murid, dari mahasiswa ya. Too many assignments. Kalau dosen kan nggak ngerjakan. A lot of assignments, yes, too many assignments with short time. Nah, ini fakta yang muncul ya. Many tasks to do. Saya akan turunkan. Boring. Students do not have study skills. Jadi kemampuan belajarnya tidak ada. Signal, limited data ya, internet data, kuota bahasa Indonesia. Unclear explanation. Sometimes I don't know. I now supervise PPL, Ibu Bapak, practice teaching, and I can see that some of the guru pamo, the teachers, there just directly give assignments without any explanations and no feedback also. Yeah, it's time to reflect. Yeah, for us. Right, I'm waiting for 1 more minute. We have like 34 responses at the moment. Thank you very much. This is good, very good data, very good data. Device or gadgets ya, tidak semuanya punya gadgets dan seterusnya. Procrastination, so you wait until the deadline time. Silence, passive students, yes. Right, thank you very much. So basically, I can see that various responses emerging. Some of them are passive students or participation, a lot of tasks, and some technical problems like signal and gadgets. Thank you very much, Ibu Bapak. I will go back to the slides now. You can keep going doing that one. Right, so now the slide. Right, thank you very much. So what can you tell about the responses just now, Ibu Bapak? The first question is the strategies, learning strategies that you employ so far, and then the challenges. Anyone would like to say? You can raise your hand, ada tombol raise hand di pojok kanan bawah ketika diklik tombol participant, atau silakan langsung saya siapa, kemudian bisa share. Silakan. Because I want to be interactive if possible, yeah, because it is not only from me to you. So what can you tell about this? Too many assignments, for example? Oh, it's a lot, so the loads are, I'm overloaded.
Hi, my answer?
Sure. Siapa ini? Ibu Samsia ya?
Yes, sir.
Oke, silakan Ibu.
Okay, actually, the pandemic is a challenge for me to teaching my student at SMP 2 Negeri Kekecil, Tual Maluku Tenggara, sir. So I try to imply giving them some PowerPoint by WhatsApp, but it's not effective because all of my students in village didn't have the a gadget. So I try to come to their house one by one, and then I try to explain my material. But sometimes the student bored and they didn't finishing the work well. So the challenge is I should need so much time to finishing one of the indicator of just one of the competency that I want to they to finish it. So I need you to giving some maybe like yeah the ways or maybe like the method to need to help this condition for this one. Okay, just that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Samsia. It's a very, if I can say, common problem at the moment, happening everywhere. So, yeah, I will respond by presenting this. So, what I'm trying to show later on is some possibilities and also opportunities for you to refocus on your learning activity and learning process. Yeah, for example, not only to indicate because of what is that, Merdeka, and also what happens today in the pandemic. Yeah, but that's a very common problem, and I really appreciate that you go to your students' house one by one. Not so many teachers are doing that. Bravo for you, Ibu. Thank you. Yeah. So I will respond later throughout the presentation because that is the way that I'm going to share with you how to cope with the challenges. Yeah. Thank you. So allow me to continue now. So I get the problems in general from you. So allow me to continue. We already know this one. What happens today? It is always directed to equipping our students to be ready to take roles or paths in the 21st century learning or in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So we already know and learned that it is not enough if you only memorize things or you only are able to recall things without being able to apply it in different contexts. So you have to be able to have 21st century skills, for example. You have to be able to communicate effectively, to collaborate with people that you don't know, to be creative, inventing something new and valuable, and of course, to be critical, that you do not accept things as it is from the first time. So we know this one. The question is how? How we equip the soft skills to the students. Soft skills cannot be taught, Ibu Bapak. It must be embedded. So what I'm trying to show you today is embedding the core skills or soft skills into our teaching and learning process. So you will see later how I embed communication, how I embed collaboration and critical thinking also, for example, in or within the learning process. That's the first. The second, in the school context, our Ministry of Education already issued Merdeka Belajar policy. This has four main policies and one initiative. Ya, Ibu Bapak pasti sudah tahu. Misalnya UN or national exam is not available this year. Change into character and so on and so on. And one initiative is called Guru Penggerak. Yeah. So the idea is good. One prominent characteristic from Merdeka Belajar is that you just focus into teaching, not into administration anymore. Yeah. Before this, the teachers must design and develop like 14 pages of RPP. Ya, kalau Ibu Bapak juga mengajar PPG gitu ya, like what I do, itu workshopnya 6 bulan buat RPP terus gitu ya. Jadi ada teman-teman dari timur banyak yang PPG di kami di Bali. So it is not really effective actually. So you can design one page lesson plan. That's the most prominent thing. In the campus context, there is also a policy called Campus Merdeka. So the main thing is that you, as the students later, can go to different departments to learn courses and skills that you want to upgrade yourself. The prodi, the department, can, dalam tanda kutip, in quotation mark, sell interesting or valuable courses, yeah, depending on the nature of your department. Yeah, so your students can go exchanging themselves to upgrade themselves. So this is what happens in the global world today. But then pandemic came, so on March, like 8 months ago, and this changes everything. Yeah, still the idea is going into industrial revolution and also equipment of skills to students, but then how to do it during the pandemic. So what happens today is actually a combination and integration of so many things. It is called new learning process by Fuller, where our students and the teachers and lecturers learn, play, and research and produce things together at the same time. It happens similarly like before. This is the same like before, but now during the pandemic, it becomes more and more. Even the pressure and also the way you produce something. Right. Oh, what happens to my slide? Sorry, it just suddenly got blank. Can you see my slide now, Pak Henry? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Right, so everything becomes online during the pandemic, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous. I'm sure that you already understand the term. Basically, synchronous means happens at the same time, like our Zoom meeting today. Asynchronous means happens in different time. For example, WhatsApp. WhatsApp can be synchronous if you set it like that. But if you, for example, give tasks and then the students responded in or within a day or a week, then it can be asynchronous. Everything is abrupt, happening at very sudden time. Not everyone is ready, as what Pak Director said just now. Everything is shifting and also not only shifting but disruptive. Ibu Bapak pasti sudah tahu disruption, but maybe Corona changed you a lot now. Yeah, only Corona can change you now. Before this, we know about disruption and everything, but not everybody probably want to change, right? But Corona changed people a lot and faster. Yeah, everything is unprepared. So facilities, not everyone is ready with the facilities like some share just now. Resources, we don't have enough resources, connectivity, location. Not everybody accept the use of technologies, for example, or accept the use of discussion more and more. Not everybody is ready, even not everybody's believe the use of a particular thing. Yeah, everything is overwhelming and confusing. So too much. Yeah, and you feel distant. Ya, seperti sekarang we are teaching and we are sharing. I am in Bali, you are in Ambon, for example, and we are scattered in different places. It can be isolated in a way. It can be demotivating for our students. Our students are in their homes alone with so many assignments, and their capacity is not enough at the moment. So they can be galau ya bahasa orang kerennya ya. They can be demotivated. And also there is a divide, ada gap gitu ya, in terms of digital gap, social gap, economical gap. Yeah, you can see from this that suddenly you learn of how to use Zoom, Google Meet, WebEx, WhatsApp even more, Telegram even more. You are joining webinar a lot, you are looking or watching at live streaming from YouTube, from webinar. You probably go to MOOC, Massive Open Online Course, from Future Learn, from Coursera, and from Udemy, and many others. Suddenly, you come across those many apps that you probably don't know before. You learn Schoology as one of the e-learning platforms. You learn Lesson Writer, for example, an artificial intelligence-based lesson plan making or creator. You learn about Moodle a lot. You learn about Canva a lot to design posters and so on. You learn about Google Classroom, Google Artificial Intelligence, and so on and so on. So many things happening at the same time. But again, human can always change, yeah. But the change is varied compared to one another. So what happens today, as what Prof. Alex mentioned just now, is called remote teaching. On March, it is called emergency remote teaching. Why it is emergency? Because everything happens at a sudden time. And then after a couple of months, like 4 or 5 months, on July, then we have to accept that it is called remote teaching, not emergency anymore for some people. Why? Because you have time to prepare, to design lesson plans, and so on and so on. But for some people, it is still an emergency remote teaching even until today, where you don't have time to design things, you don't have enough facilities and resources. All right? So, I'm sorry, Bapak Ibu. It just seemed to get blank screen, yeah, so many times. It doesn't happen before, yeah. I run a lot of webinars, yeah, so it doesn't happen. So sorry. So the next one is called the difference between online and face-to-face. So you have to understand that when you run an online class or you are learning in an online class, there are so many dimensions and aspects that you have to understand. The first one is the space is different. Online space is different to face-to-face. Kalau di kelas itu, you are in a building block, but in online, you can be anywhere, everywhere. The presence can be different. There are so many presence types, yeah, emotional presence, cognitive presence, teaching presence, and so on. Jadi misalnya kalau gurunya ngajar, kemudian matikan kamera, itu presence-nya tidak dirasa oleh muridnya. Demikian juga sebaliknya. Yeah. The next one is interaction. So if you cannot interact within a specific time, especially when you are dealing with millennial generations or Gen Z, then you will lose them. Ya, karena salah satu karakteristik dari Gen Z, seperti Ibu Bapak tahu, you only have like 8 seconds to get their attention. If not, then you will lose them. Yeah? Right. Next is motivation. The motivation can be different. Yeah, if you give only assignments, they probably just do it for the sake of getting scores or nilai. But then if you cater them, you accommodate them. Sometimes I also have to contact them personally because they don't show up, for example, like 2 meetings in my class, or they don't submit on time. So sometimes you have to do a lot of things. The engagement, if you are familiar with engagement level from Philip Skeletsky, for example, there are 5 levels of engagement. So which engagement that you want to have? Yeah. Normally, from the research, engagement level for Indonesian students are number 3 or level 3. It is called ritual engagement. Ritual engagement means that your body is there, but your mind is not there. As simple as that. Pernah nggak Bapak Ibu ngajar di kelas, muridnya badannya ada di sana, tapi dia nggak di sana pikirannya. That is called ritual engagement. Jadi keterlibatannya hanya formalitas ritual, ya. Ada 5 jenis engagement. Yang paling bagus itu highly engaged, ya. Yang paling bawah itu rebellion, pemberontak, gitu ya. Itu tipenya. Next, in online learning, feedback is important. So you cannot just give assignments. You have to give feedback. Yeah, I know this is a lot. I teach, Ibu Bapak, I teach like 300 students every semester. S1, S2, S3. Teaching only, not supervising for 40 to 50 students every semester. But teaching from Monday to Sunday. So you have to give feedback a lot. Yeah? Right. This is the difference between online and face-to-face. When you conduct online learning, you have to understand the online learning pedagogy, Ibu Bapak. Jadi, the nature of online learning. First, hanya konsep yang saya kasih ya, online learning is not digitizing the materials. So, you don't only scan and put e-book or PDF into your Moodle or Schoology or Canvas. Jadi tidak hanya menaruh materi online saja atau elektronik, and then ask the students to read like 200 pages book. They will not read your book. Yeah, you have to chunk the materials. You have to have a bit-sized materials, right? Second, when you give the materials, you also need to design effective learning strategies and activities and give them space to learn. Jadi harus ada strategi yang beragam dan juga aktivitas yang beragam agar mereka ada ruang-ruang untuk benar-benar belajar yang bermakna. Next, learner autonomy is very needed now. Learner autonomy does not mean that they learn by themselves, but simply means that they have control and management to learn by themselves. They have the initiatives, yeah, which leads to student-centered learning, right? Next, there should be interactivity. Yeah, you cannot just give assignments. You have to be there. And what is just mentioned in the Mentimeter, task load. Jadi cognitive load-nya juga dipikirkan. Do not give a lot of assignments. Imagine that the students take like 5 courses and then all the courses have a lot of assignments. Okay? When you conduct online skills, you have to think of the components of online learning, Ibu Bapak. When you conduct online skills, online learning skills, you have to consider online learning platform components. The first one is the design of online course. It doesn't mean that you have to have an e-learning platform, but if you have, it's better because you can put everything in order in your e-learning platform. Daripada scattered dengan WA dan seterusnya, you put everything in order, unit 1, unit 2, atau meeting 1, meeting 2, bisa dengan meeting atau topik atau unit, and then all the activities under that week or unit. But the activities can be through WhatsApp or through even paper if the technology is not there. Later, I will show you the use of low technologies and also high technologies if it is possible. So it is not the technologies, Ibu Bapak, but the pedagogy. All right. Second, you have to consider verbal and non-verbal. In online meeting like this, your non-verbal is very important. For example, Ibu Bapak, if I want to give jempol, yeah, thumb, you can do that in Zoom, yeah, or in chat system. For example, I can give you thank you as my non-verbal presentation of teacher. I can use jempol with emojis. Yeah, so this is an example. Because I'm sharing now, I cannot give what is that emoticon. Yeah. Next, subject matter expertise. When you are a teacher, you have to be able to deal with your content. Yeah. Then you have to think of meaningful, relevant learning activities. Questioning skill is also important from you and especially from the students. So when you give materials, allow some rooms for them to think and question. Yeah. How to do that? Give something controversial, interesting, and also promote or encourages their curiosity. Yeah. Students engagement, as I already mentioned, and then the visual design. This is something technical, but imagine if your e-learning platform is very messy, then your students do not want to learn from your platform. Misalnya Moodle, ya, pakai Moodle Ibu Bapak, Moodle-nya kacau. Ada gambar terlalu besar, ada video tiba-tiba tidak rapi begitu, visual design-nya tidak benar. Ya, navigasi juga, di mana home, di mana tombol link ini, link itu jadi perlu diperhatikan. Right? Now, another thing that you have to think from what is that online learning is called housekeeping. Tadi Ibu Bella, kalau tidak salah, moderator, master of ceremony sudah menyampaikan housekeeping. Jadi housekeeping ini semacam aturan, bisa diganti dengan common grounds atau common rules atau netiquette. Etiquette in the internet. So in my class, I have this netiquette. Yeah, it's a common thing. So like be on time, you know this already. Tapi bayangkan waktu bulan Maret dulu, banyak yang terlambat. Kemudian noise free. Banyak yang suara ayam, suara mungkin bakso begitu ya. Nah, seperti hari ini saya di tetangga sebelah ada yang lagi membangun gitu. Jadi mudah-mudahan tidak terlalu ribut begitu ya, karena di rumah bekerja. Right. Always mute your speaker. Ya, saya ingat dulu memberikan webinar dengan 1.000 orang begitu ya di sebuah departemen agama begitu. Itu di awal-awal pandemi. Jadi baru masuk itu karena mereka sudah 2 minggu, 3 minggu tidak bertemu ya, karena biasanya bertemu. Itu rame kelasnya di awal. Jadi salam-salaman gitu ya. Jadi things like that. But now after 8 months, mahasiswa saya sudah mengerti. Jadi ketika join, they mute their speakers. Ya, use chat. Ya, ini juga sudah mulai mengerti. Use real name. Kadang-kadang banyak yang namanya Oppo, Lenovo gitu ya, atau user ini siapa gitu ya. So atau kadang-kadang mahasiswa kita pintar ibu bapak dosen gitu ya. Kalau ibu bapak buka settingan change name, bisa mahasiswa mengganti nama, dia akan ganti nama dengan reconnecting titik-titik. Jadi ceritanya dia sinyalnya jelek, padahal dia tidur di sebelah sana. Ya gitu ya. Jadi perhatikan hal-hal seperti itu juga ya. Bapak Ibu juga harus digitally literate gitu ya. And when you talk, you look at your camera. Kadang ada yang pakai HP begitu ya. Jadi HP-nya yang kamera, terus dia kerja di laptop. Jadi pandangannya itu ke samping. I don't think it is okay, right? But again, if you use laptop or mobile phones, you have to look at the camera. Use enough lighting. This is technical. Seperti saya pakai lampu hari ini karena ruangan saya tidak cukup cahaya. Ya, lampunya warnanya kuning itu, Bapak. Jangan putih ya, itu teknis. And because we are dealing with technologies, make sure it is working. Well, sometimes it's not working like what I have today. Okay, so things happening like today, what you have to do? My answer to this is you have to revisit pedagogy. Ya, first, look at your learning objective. Jadi kalau mau ngajar ibu bapak, ini saya pikir ibu bapak sudah tahu, you have to look for your purpose. Sama kayak kalau menulis riset, ibu bapak yang sudah pasti biasa dengan riset, go back to your research questions when you are lost, kan gitu. Ya, it's like your map, gitu ya. So go back to your research objective, kayak Ibu Samsia tadi bilang, indikatornya atau objektifnya. Next, think about the media and the materials. If the objective is like X, should I use video? Atau cukup dengan reading text? Jadi jangan semuanya pakai video kalau tidak cocok dengan objektifnya. Next, you have to think the activities. So if I have this kind of objective and then I ask them to watch video, what kind of activities that I can ask my students? Is it only watching and then nothing happen? Or not taking? Or discussion? So you have to think about that. Then you have to check their understanding through assessment. With assessment, I'm sure that you know this one, there are at least 2 or 3 types of assessment that you have to employ today. First, assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. Ibu Bapak mungkin sudah tahu ini. Assessment for learning is a short, bit-sized type of assessment. Ini nama lainnya formative assessment. So, small quizzes at the end of the topic, that is assessment for learning. Assessment of learning is every end of period. This is called summative assessment. Assessment as learning, the use of assessment is as reflection for the learning. So for example, the question is, how do you learn so far? Any problems? That is a kind of assessment as learning. What is good now in online context is called assessment for learning. So every week or every end of topic, I suggest you to have a chunked, bit-sized, and short-term assessment type. Yeah? Right. So this is what happens in Singapore, Ibu Bapak. So one family, a dentist and a sleep trainer, yeah, they have 4 kids, and then all the 4 kids can learn using gadgets. Jadi anak-anaknya 4, 3 pakai laptop, 1 bapaknya nemenin. Okay, but in Singapore also the same thing. The same family having 4 kids, but only like 2 gadgets. Yeah, so there is a divide here, a gap. Yang satu mampu, yang satu kurang mampu. How about in Indonesia? This is what Samsia is doing at the moment. Sometimes you have to go to your students' houses. Okay, so are you familiar with this then now? Jadi Ibu Bapak ngajar, muridnya juga semangat, tapi 10 menit sudah mulai ngantuk. Nah, ini apa yang terjadi sebenarnya kira-kira? Sampai 20 menit sudah tidak jelas. Gitu. Ya. So you have, I'm sure that you have this one, this kind of activity. Right. So this is what happened, and challenges happen. The question is how you deal with that one from the perspective of autonomous learning. I will give you an example of how to run a class, in language learning context, especially English, how to deal with this kind of situation today. It is not perfect, but I'm trying to show you things, a lot of things on opportunities, and also tackling some issues here. Right. So the example is like this. The learning objective is students will be able to provide relevant information about COVID-19 waste in the form of poster. Ini adalah tujuan pembelajarannya Ibu Bapak ya. So you have to go back to this objective when you are lost, Ibu Bapak. So when you know that this is the objective, you start thinking now, what is the media? What activities that I have to do? What are the materials? And then what are or is the assessment? Okay, so for example, if the technology is not available there for you, I add something in my slide now. You can use a simple technologies like low-cost technologies. Low-cost technologies involve paper, pen, or at least WhatsApp. Yeah, WhatsApp is very popular in Indonesia. Yeah. For example, here I'm giving you an example related to the learning objective just now. Yeah. For example, I give these emojis or emoticons to my students through WhatsApp, and then I ask them, what can you create? What sentence that you can create from these symbols? Coba sekarang saya tanya Ibu Bapak, saya kasih waktu 2 menit, apa yang bisa Ibu Bapak buat dengan emoji ini? Ada bola, football, basketball, playing football or basketball, yoga, cycling, and then an X, and then ambulance, and then a big smile. What sentence that you can create? You can create or write a sentence in chat box. So this also can be a fun activity, can be an icebreaker activity, can be a part of the learning process. This time I'm using this as a part of learning process while having fun. So to continue to bridge from the learning objective. Yeah, this is related to what we are going to learn today. Anyone would like to start? What sentence that you can create from these emojis, please? Nah, ini tidak mudah, tapi juga mungkin menantang bagi orang-orang. Ya. Ada bola sepak bola, ada basket, ada orang main basket, ada yoga, dan seterusnya. Silakan. The problem with sometimes with our culture of learning is that we are shy or afraid, because we always think that when you respond, it is only about right and wrong. It is only about getting 100. In fact, it is a process of learning. So making mistakes is common. Yeah. Right. Anyone? Ibu Bapak? How can you connect the ideas from the emojis? Ibu Samsa, thank you very much for starting. Menjaga badan yang sehat untuk terhindar dari penyakit dan bisa tersenyum. Thank you. Ibu Bella, sports give a happy and healthy life. Good job. And Ibu Helena, doing different kinds of sports will keep us healthy and happy. Thank you very much for starting. I'm sure that you have your own opinion. But because this is an open-ended question or task, you as a teacher must have a guided or guidance of answer. At least there should be sports, being healthy, not getting sick, and then a big smile. Jadi kalau dia open ended, jawabannya Ibu Bapak sebagai guru harus punya rubrik atau indikator, gitu ya. Nah, ada nanti contoh sebenarnya di tempat lain saya berikan yang close ended dengan WhatsApp juga. Right, thank you very much. So this is the idea to connect to the topic. Kan topiknya tentang COVID-19, bukan COVID-19-nya, gitu ya, Ibu Bapak. Nah, you can start doing this using with your students. Bisa pakai icebreaker Ibu Bapak. Kalau sudah mulai siswanya diem, you can start with this one. Again, a simple game. Ya, you can get some emojis from Emojipedia or get emoji and then play around WhatsApp and also Telegram if you can do that. If not, you can ask using paper, like Ibu Samsia, you give this through paper and then collect every week. This happens also in Bali folder. Jadi satu minggu ditaruh dalam folder, tugas-tugasnya dan penjelasannya, minggu depannya diambil kemudian dikasih folder yang baru. Nah itu caranya yang bisa dilakukan. Ya. Di Sumbawa pakai walkie-talkie karena nggak bisa beli pulsa tiap saat. Walkie-talkie cuma harganya 300.000 bisa dipakai sepanjang pandemi. Okay, using a voice, gitu ya. So there should be always a way. And then after that, you can ask the students to watch a video. So this is a pre-activity, meaning that you can ask the students to watch this at home. Yeah, for example, because the topic is COVID-19 waste, I can give them a video about COVID-19 waste. For example, this one, and then before I ask them to watch, I give them some instructions. First, take important notes on the video. What happened? Who involved? What did they state or express? Where is the setting? And the most important thing is that, what is your opinion? Kenapa pertanyaan terakhir ini penting? Because this is asking their creativity and critical thinking. The first 4 questions is basically recalling the fact and information from the video. Okay, so I give them this video. If you can also look and listen for a moment. So this one.
And now we have this to contend with. We have the coronavirus and all these masks are now washing up on the beaches. These masks being bundled up like this, would you like to swallow this? Dolphins, turtles, porpoises, swallow this, it's going to block up their digestive tract. Doesn't make it any better if you bundle it than if you just leave it as it is. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be going into the ocean.
Okay, this is only an example Ibu Bapak related to the topic. And make sure if you have video, it should not be longer than 5 minutes. So 3 to 5 minutes maximum. Yeah, because it is about cognitive loads and so on and so on. The first 30 seconds is about introduction, 1.5 minutes is the content, and the last 30 seconds is the conclusion. This also happens the same when you create your videos. All right. So you ask them, the students to watch this at home and while taking notes and answering to this question. The next activity that you can ask the students is to flip and engage the learning. First, you will divide the students into different groups. If it is online using Zoom, you can do breakout rooms. Jadi makanya kemarin Pak Karol saya tanya, bisa nggak breakout? Tapi tidak masalah, ini hanya contoh. Jadi when you use Zoom, make sure the feature of breakout rooms is on. Jadi nanti di setting di website Zoom-nya dibuka dulu, kemudian baru bisa run breakout rooms. Nah, breakout rooms ini sudah mulai banyak dirubah fiturnya. So you can assign manually, or you can also assign or ask them to choose their own groups. Ya, dulu belum bisa. So what kind of groups? Example, you decided like this. First, as government representative. Second, as health experts. Third, as citizen. Fourth, business people. And 5, as educational sector people. They are all related to COVID-19 waste. And then you ask them to divide themselves using randomizer or lottery and so on. And then you can also, if it is asynchronous, seperti hari ini, you can also directly do breakout rooms and ask them to do discussion within the Zoom system or Google Meet or whatever that you use. So the first one is Zoom. The second one is you can also play around with Mixaba. You can also use special.chat. You also use Remo. Yeah, there are a lot actually. Yeah, team.video, Mixaba, and so on. So basically, you try to divide your groups online at the same time. If you cannot do that, you can do it asynchronously. Yeah, give them like a week to do that. After they divide their group, you can ask them not to start the discussion first, but to search for resources. Yeah, you can ask them to do a something called crowd curation. So to curate means that you collect relevant information into one place. Yeah. First, you can ask them to do Google search, to read from books, read from news, to do interview, and so on related issue to COVID-19 ways. Yeah, for example, how WHO tackled the issue, what happens in Indonesia at the moment, what happens to COVID-19 today, how to be healthy and active, what happens in terms of education, and what happens in the future. How to do crowd curation? You can use Wakelet, for example. You can also use Evernote. You can use Mix. For example, I show you something in Wakelet, something like this. So Wakelet is a place where you compile everything into one, right? So you compile everything into one, and you just give the link to the students, and then everyone will put everything there. The links, photo, picture, videos, and so on, right? So let me check first. Yeah, this is what happens in your Wakelet. So like today, I have like 84 items for COVID-19 resources. So all the students can go to the same place, reading from various information and sources that are collected by all the members of the class. And then they will review and then discuss that based on the group's perspective. Jadi kalau nanti dia dapatnya misalnya health experts, they have to read from this and then respond using health experts' perspective. All right? Okay, now after that, so you can give them some time. You can then ask them to discuss this online using online board or wall. One of them is called Padlet. Yeah, Padlet. I already designed Padlet. You probably know this one. And then the example is like this. Yang dapat government akan mengklik tanda tambah ini, kemudian dia akan menulis. Ya, contohnya dikasih di paling kiri agar anak-anak tidak bingung, mahasiswa tidak bingung, ibu bapak, dengan nama kemudian cara merespon. And then if you are health expert, then you respond to health experts, citizen, and so on and so on. How about if I cannot use this one, Pak? Yes, still you can use this one using paper. Ya, papernya ditaruh di folder. If you can use WhatsApp, ask them to write in note system or feature using WhatsApp, and then screenshot that one and then send to group WhatsApp group. You can always do that. Ya, if you can use Padlet, it's good. 6 orang atau 5 orang dalam group government, you can ask them to discuss within group first. After that, you can ask them to do rotation station or jigsaw. Yeah, rotation station means government group will check on health experts group. Health experts group will check on citizen, business people, and so on. So they do rotation. Yeah, giving feedbacks, ask questions, and so on. After they go back to their own groups, they will check on the other group members' feedback and then respond to that. All right. So this is called rotation station. And then if you cannot do Padlet, you can do this in WhatsApp or Telegram. If you are familiar with Discord, jadi Discord ini untuk anak-anak yang main game ya, anak-anak muda pasti tahu ini. Bagusnya Discord adalah dia seperti WhatsApp, tetapi di dalam satu grup ibu bapak bisa membuat grup subgrup. Tidak seperti WhatsApp, grupnya tidak bisa buat grup baru gitu ya. Tapi kalau Discord ada grup, ada subgrupnya. Misalnya grup 1, grup 2, grup 3. Gitu ya. Next, after this, you can ask them to create a poster. To create a poster. Okay? Right. So, for example, you give the example like this, poster, and then also a picture like this. This is also a poster, Ibu Bapak. Jangan nanti menyuruh membuat poster di awal, karena anak-anak milenial itu pasti akan langsung buat poster tanpa melewati proses belajar, Ibu Bapak. Dia akan cari langsung aplikasi atau dia Google gambar tertentu, dia copy paste, nanti jadi Kopassus gitu istilah saya untuk pasukan elit yang suka copy dan paste. Ya. Nah, itu. Jadi harus melewati proses belajar ya. Bagaimana caranya? How to do this? You can give them as a teacher, you can give them how to create posters. For example, using Canva, PictoChat, and so on with the links. Can the students do something else? Yes. As a teacher, you just give them some triggers or stimulations. Kalau mereka mau pakai yang lain, boleh, Ibu Bapak. And don't forget the assessment, because this is a project-based, meaning that you are looking at performance, then you give them a rubric. You give them the rubric to the students. Jadi jangan nanti menilai siswa seperti kucing dalam karung. Your students know the way they are assessed, which dimensions and which components they are assessed, so they can focus on that one. Yeah, everything is transparent. Yeah, give them before the project. Right? Now, if you don't want to do poster, you can do some alternatives. For example, you can ask them to create a meme. Ya, meme. Meme itu adalah poster for fun atau for funny things. For example, this is still about COVID-19, but it's in a fun situation. Alright? Right. Anak-anak muda pasti tahu ini Bapak Ibu. How to create memes? There are some meme creators. Okay? If you don't want to create memes, you can ask them to create comic about COVID-19 ways or COVID-19. Yeah, for example, something like this. How to create this one? You can use Cartoon Story Maker, comic strip, storyboard that, Pixton, and so many other things. They are all free. Yeah. Don't forget the assessment too. If you want to ask them to create a news report in the form of presentation with video, you can also do that. It's called screencasting. Screencasting means that you record the screen of your laptop or your mobile phones. For example, you are trying to explain this and then you record at the same time. Yeah, you can use PowerPoint, a low-cost technology if you don't want to buy something expensive. So actually you can record your voice and video using PowerPoint now. If not, you can use some other applications. For example, Quick application, KineMaster. Anak yang main di TikTok sama Instagram pasti tahu KineMaster sama Viva Video, InShot dan yang lainnya. If you are using laptop, you can use Camtasia also, or Jing, QuickTime. If you are using mobile phones, you can use Mobizen, A to Z screen recorder, or screen recorder bawaan dari HP-nya sudah ada biasanya. So they can do this, but the question is that what happens to the content? Ya, ketika mereka pakai teknologi dengan bagus, mungkin mereka terampil, skillful, but probably they are not literate. Jadi bedakan yang namanya nanti dengan ICT skills dengan digital literacy, Bu Bapak. Mungkin saja mereka terampil, kita terampil, tapi belum tentu melek teknologi. Beda ya. So this is the assessment for digital video, same basically. If you don't want to do all of those, you can use infographics. You can ask them to do infographics. What is that? You explain them first, and then you give the example. How to make infographics? You can explain these websites or apps, for example, Canva, Genially, PictoChat, and so on and so on. For example, this is a free infographic maker from Canva or Genially. They are all free, they are all interactive, they are all cool and keren sekali. Anak-anak cuma ngisi konten. Tapi untuk bisa ngisi konten kan harus melewati proses belajar yang Ibu Bapak bimbing. Yeah, how to assess infographics? This is one of the ways. Yeah, one of the rubrics. So give them everything they need. All right. And at last, if you can also ask them to do this, yeah, something like an essay, yeah, yeah, you can ask an essay. For example, if I'm a Greenpeace member, try create an interview, try create a story, try to do a podcast. Mulai ngetop lagi podcast ya, saya ingat dulu menulis tentang podcast 2000 berapa ya, 6 kalau nggak salah, sekarang muncul lagi. Role play dan seterusnya. And don't forget the assessment. Basically, Ibu Bapak, karena ini hanya seminar ya, saya tidak bisa mencontohkan atau mengajak Ibu Bapak praktek karena bukan workshop ya. So because this is a seminar or webinar, basically I just tell you the concept at the moment ya. So basically what you are doing is actually a flip and engage model or something which is called an online flip learning. Ya, dulu sudah ada namanya flip learning where the students learn at home and then discuss things in the classroom. But because the classroom is closed today, their classroom is online. So basically, you can ask the students to watch videos using YouTube, or you use Flipgrid or Google Classroom. And then after they watch video, you ask for engagement. You help them to understand more using Padlet, using Edpuzzle, and so on and so on. And then you check their understanding at last using quizzes or Genially, and so on and so on. You can read more about this from kathleentucker.com. Yeah, she is a very good writer on this one. So the idea is then, Ibu Bapak, sekali lagi, it is not in the technologies. Jadi banyak sekali nanti ada yang bertanya, kalau saya mau ajar speaking, apps-nya yang keren apa ya? So you do not start with that one. Ya, so you start with learning objective, Ibu Bapak. Kalau tujuan belajarnya adalah anak-anak bisa mendeskripsikan sesuatu, kira-kira apps-nya apa? Gitu. Nanti pertanyaannya. Ya, so again, consider learning objective, media and materials, activities and strategies, and don't forget the assessment. Right? So, with assessment, Ibu Bapak, one of the ways is using Google Classroom. Google Classroom is a good thing now. Yeah. So, if you are familiar with Google Classroom, Ibu Bapak, you can create a class for the first time. And then if you have another teacher, you can invite a team teacher or your students using code, QR code, or link. And then you develop your class using class folders, Google Drive, Google Slides, and so on. You can also have add-ons, Ibu Bapak. Nah, Chrome itu banyak sekali add-onnya. Seperti misalnya talk and comment. So sometimes I comment my students' responses using voice, using add-ons in Google. I can also use Bitmoji or Kaizena for checking their writing or Grammarly. Ya, mungkin Ibu Bapak tahu itu. Then you can stream that one. In terms of assessment, you can create a short quiz like ABCD or a long quiz like you can use Google Form for this one. What is good from Google Form or Google Classroom is that everything is integrated. Jadi semua produk Google itu jadi satu. Mau pakai YouTube langsung dengan bagian Google. Mau pakai presentation PPT sudah bisa pakai Google Slides. And if you want to do test, you can use Google Form dan seluruh nilainya langsung diimport dalam satu semester. Termasuk absensi, Ibu Bapak. Absensinya satu semester langsung diimport. Langsung jadi siapa yang tidak hadir dan seterusnya. Oke? Nah, Ibu Bapak juga tidak perlu mengulang-ulang. Jika membuat satu, ketika diperlukan di kelas yang berbeda, bisa reuse post. Ya? Nah, another application of platform that you can use for rubrics or assessment is called RubyStar. Yeah, you can play around with that. There are some examples of rubrics, available rubrics already, or you can create your own rubrics. So this is about assessment, right? So what is actually happening from what I shared just now, Ibu Bapak? When you deal with the learning activities, there are some important things that you have to consider. First, you ask the students to browse and learn the content and the materials by themselves. This process is called understanding the content, both from the teachers and from the students. Then you can ask the students to do some activities, for example, a small group discussion, a think, pair, share activity, a whole class discussion, or a mind mapping activities. This is also a jigsaw and rotation station, like the one that I give example in Padlet just now. This is called, you understand the pedagogy. The pedagogy means that you know how to deliver the content. Then you can use tools like WhatsApp, Padlet, or even classroom discussion or discussion forum in Moodle or e-learning. This is called that you understand technology. So the integration of content, pedagogy, and technology is very important today. Not technology, but the integration of everything. Yeah, this is called TPEC. Yeah, later I will explain that one. When you do online learning, pay attention to this one also, Ibu Bapak. Mungkin sudah pernah baca. So basically, when you do online learning, pay attention to two things, Ibu Bapak. First, bandwidth, jadi koneksinya. Second, immediacy, kesegeraannya. So for example, if your bandwidth is very good, and then you must explain the materials at that time, for example, on Monday, then you can use video conference like Zoom, the red one. Yeah, it is synchronous, it is high bandwidth, it is highly immediate. But then if it is synchronous, yeah, at the same time, but your bandwidth is not very good, but you must explain it today, you can use WhatsApp. All right? And if your bandwidth is not good, low bandwidth, and then it is not immediate, you can use email or discussion forum in Moodle. Right? So this is the quadrant, ya, 4 kuadran yang perlu diperhatikan. And one more thing that I would like to emphasize, when you do online learning, don't forget using your online learning. You have to be humane. Jadi jadilah manusiawi. What are those? You have to be present, you have to have empathy, you have to be aware of your student situation. Ya, misalnya, bagaimana kabarmu? Kalau dia tidak jawab, you call them, you contact them personally. Ya, you have to be present also, right? So don't only work on cognitive side, but also affective side, right? So what can I conclude from this one? First, when you teach and when you learn, especially in the 21st century, you have to understand the content, that is the material, then you have to know how to deliver the content, that is the strategy or pedagogy, and then you can employ relevant tools or technological tools, that is technology. So this is called TPACK. Ya, silakan baca Ibu Bapak. Saya bisa cerita panjang tentang TPEC, tetapi karena waktu, ini adalah salah satu learning framework saja. Ada banyak yang lain, Ibu Bapak. Kalau ini dari Mishra and Kohler, ya. The next one is from Warsaw. If you are looking at technology only, you are using instrumental approach. If you are looking at the pedagogy only, you are determinist. Actually, there should be an integration of both instrumental approach and this determinist approaches. This is called critical approaches. Critical approach from Warsaw. So it is not only technology or the tool or the means, but also the way you do it. This is called new learning now, Ibu Bapak. Jadi jangan stop berpikir teknologi apa dan berapa banyak teknologi, but how they are used in my class. Jadi if I use WhatsApp, how am I going to use WhatsApp in my class to make meaningful learning? And don't forget to humanize your online learning. Right? So basically, we have learned a lot and shared a lot about things today. So what you have to think in your learning today is you have to chunk your materials, you have to engage your students, you have to differentiate learning, like what I give just now. You don't ask one student or the whole group member to create comic, all of them. You can ask, okay, those group 1 create comic, group 2 create story, group 3 create video presentation. So meaning that you differentiate learning based on tasks. Then you have also to think of effective integration of everything like technology, pedagogy, and content to foster autonomous learning, self-regulated learning, self-directed learning, student-centered, and so on and so on. Don't forget assessment and feedback and humanizing online learning. While you are teaching, don't forget embedding soft skills or 21st century skills. Yeah, like higher order thinking, communication, creative thinking, and so on and so on. Right? So, is your student like this today, Ibu Bapak? Jangan sampai nanti murid kita begini, ceritanya aktif di depan laptop, kamera, tapi sebenarnya pura-pura dia gitu ya, belajarnya. Atau ada yang begini, yang di kanan, Bapak Ibu sudah berkeringat begitu mengajar, muridnya pasang kamera, ceritanya pura-pura perhatian sama materi Ibu Bapak, padahal dia pakai rekaman dengan HP, ditaruh di depan laptop. Nah, anak-anak sekarang pintar Ibu Bapak, jadi silakan. So, to avoid those, ajak mereka belajar, engage them, libatkan mereka dengan berbagai aktivitas tanpa melupakan tujuan pembelajaran, kemudian pakai teknologi yang relevan dan mengasihkan. Begitu kira-kira. These are the references that I'm using today, so you can read more from this one. Ibu Bapak, ada 3 halaman. Oke, silakan dipikirkan sekarang untuk question and answer jika ada. What has been successful in my teaching practice?
For sharing with us. I guess for all the references and the slides that you've been presented, if you may, maybe we can share to participants from the committee. We will provide the link for all of the participants to access your presentations.
Yes, I gave to Pak Carol already yesterday the link. If you still need it, I can give you the link now. Yeah, I'm going to close my presentation now, Pak Henry. So this is the last, and the link is already there and it's active. Yeah, Pak Carol probably can share to the participant, or if not, I can share it in the chat system now. Right, so this is only for your own reflection, Ibu Bapak, for the last slide. So after I share with you and discuss with you what has been successful in my own teaching and what can be improved. Thank you very much, Ibu Bapak. I return this to Pak Henry as the moderator. Thank you. Thank you. So that's the end of my presentation, Ibu Bapak. If you have anything, do not hesitate to share with me. So we are learning together, yeah? Thank you very much. Silakan Pak Henry, saya kembalikan.
Thank you very much for having your time and sharing. It was very insightful for us, and maybe I would like to remind I will use this one. I would like to remind all of the participants to activate your camera as what you have listened from the code of conduct that previously mentioned by our Master Pattimura. And I would like to remind all of the participants again that you can give your questions through the chat box using the format that already been set. You can write your name, asking, and the speaker's names, and then the questions that you would like to ask. And then next, I'm going to invite our second speaker, Dr. Henry Marwanaya. I'd like to present Dr. Henry Marwanaya. Dr. Henry Marwanaya is an English lecturer from Pattimura University. His doctoral degree comes from State University Malang. Graduated in 2018. His research focus primarily concerns the area of teaching, all learning technology and pedagogy. Several awards that have been received by Dr. Marwanaya include Indonesian Massive Open Online Course Module in 2016 and extraordinary support provided by Perhimpunan Budget Agency Indonesia in 2011. And Mr. Marwanaya also been a speaker in several international seminars, and most of his research has been published regarding the issues of technology and PSLTG. So, Pak Marwanaya, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, Pak Hen. Let me give chance for Pak Hen to give your presentation, Pak Hen.
Thank you, indeed. So, good afternoon, everyone. Check, check, check my voice. Can you hear my voice, everyone? Is it clear?
It is very clear,
Yes,
sir.
Pak Hen.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so, thank you so much, Pak Carol, for inviting me to be the speaker in this webinar. And thank you so much, Pak Made, for your presentation. This is very interesting presentation. We learned a lot from your presentation this morning, this afternoon, sorry. And now I'm going to do my presentation, which is I and Pamade, we both talk on the same topic. This is about developing students' online autonomous learning capacity, but I probably have a slightly different point of view. I look from another point of view, from another angle, in talking about how can we develop students' online learning, online autonomous learning capacity. So now I'm going to share my slides with you and start my presentations. Let's see. Sorry, it is go directly to the middle. Let me start from the beginning. All right. Right, sorry, it's got right to the middle of my presentation. Let me start from the beginning. Okay, it's there. Hope it's work. All right, everyone, can you see my screen? Is it appear in your screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So, okay, so it is quite the same as Pa Made, is a previous speaker. We both talking about developing students' online autonomous learning capacity. But I probably try to look it from a different angle. So there are questions that I raised in order to do this presentation, to deliver these presentations. The question is why and how should we develop students' online learning capacity? So I'm going to address this issue from a teaching perspective. I'm looking from teaching perspective and from learning as well as from learning perspective. So these are these two areas that I'm going to talk about when it relates to developing students' online learning capacity. So let's just look at the first one. It's about teaching capacity. But before we start, let me just take you to this very influential Chinese prophet or sayings, which is very influenced in our educational field. So the sayings goes, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. But teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So this is a very interesting Chinese proverb or Chinese saying that influence the way we think of education and the way we teach. If you give a man a fish, this is something like you spoon feed this man. If you give a student a fish, for example, this is something like you spoon feed. This is teacher control. And we are trying to move away from the teacher control to the something else, which is on the second part. More about teach a man to fish. more about teach a man how to face or teach the student how to learn. Because we are talking about how do we prepare the student for their future's life. So this is about the second part related to teach a man to fish. It is related to learning how to learn. This is related to learning strategy. That's move from teacher control to learner control. This is what we want the student to be. We want to reduce our control as a teachers and move this control to the student. So that is something that we want the student need to get or they need to have because that is something good for their future's life. And we are talking about how do we prepare the students for their future's life. Spoon feeding is not good enough to prepare them for the future's life. So that's why we move to something else that is to equip the students with the strategies that they can use that strategies to for the future's life, to obtain the future's life as they want. So that is what when we talk about building or developing learners autonomy or to make them to be an autonomous learner. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. It's about why do we need to talk about developing students' online autonomous learning capacity. So here are the three terms that we frequently use when we talk about developing students' autonomous learning capacity. So the first one is about learner autonomy. So what is it, learner autonomy? This is basically a psychological relationship related to the process and the content of learning. This is related to the capacity for detachment, a capacity to be an independent or to take an independent action, a capacity to control one's own learning. So this basically comes from the constructivism point of view of the students. This is the cognitive and constructivism point of view of the students. That the students, they have the capacity. That is something that they have. They are not a passive persons, but they are an active individuals who are actively, the brain is quite active process. This is like a mental process. Acquire the information and they process that information. From that point of view, develop the concept of learning based on the constructivism view that knowledge is constructed. Knowledge is learned, is something built up by the learner. So they are not a passive individual, but rather as an active individual who process the information here in this brain. So that is the capacity that they have, need to be activated. So as a teacher, it's like we need to activate what they have or what they have already known, that we can use that knowledge, connect that or what they already have with something new that we are about to give to the students. So that is the foundational of the of this thinking. And now we move to the next one is the concept of autonomous learning. Is basically is just a view that students take responsibility of their own learning. So that is what we want to be. That the student at the one stage of their learning process, they need to take this responsibility for their own learning in order for them to be what is the final goal, autonomous learner. Because autonomous learners, being an autonomous learner, so this is very important one, the student take active roles in learning process. So that is what we want. We want them to be an autonomous learner, meaning that we want them to take an active role in the learning process. They can generate idea. They can make themselves available at any time and take the learning opportunity rather than simply reacting to various stimuli provided by the teachers. So that is the stimuli is like this is the concept built by, from the behaviorism theory, but we want to move from that to another stage that is make them to be an autonomous learner. So, and next is that they want, why we want them to be an autonomous learner is because the autonomous learner is a self-activated makers of meaning. They will to take risk. So it's like learning is an exploration, investigations. They don't care about making mistake because mistake is a part of the learning process. We want to be to make to create those individual students with those mindset that learning is a process and a mistake is a part of the mistake. So that's mindset we want them to be that individual. All right. So they be a good guesser, good English learner, take the risk, right? Take an active role. So that is the autonomous learning, and that is the target of what we want them to be. So the next is, we move to the next one is about the strategy. So this is a very important one in developing learner autonomy or in developing autonomous learning. So this concept are normally be the basic one on which we use this concept to design the materials. So let's start from the cognitive strategies. So this is learning strategies. As we know that we use these cognitive strategies very often when we learning a foreign language or learning a second language to acquire the language. In the process of acquiring the language, so we activate these cognitive strategies oftenly. So what are they? Repetition. So repetition is one of the cognitive strategies that we employ when we learn a foreign language, right? Through listening, we listen, repeating on listening, keep on listening, repeating. And the teacher is always like to do some repetitions because that is the cognitive strategies that our students have in order to acquire the language that they learn. They do a lot of repetitions. We also like to do some researching. When we don't understand a certain word, then we go to dictionary. Sometimes we use L1 as a basis to produce L2. So that is the cognitive strategy that we are often use when it comes to understanding and implementing what we know, especially dealing with learning a foreign language. We oftentimes try to look at the word to understand a word or phrase by looking at the context. So that is the cognitive strategies that we employ in order to understand the word or to say, to express opinions. Transfer, using knowledge from L1 to remember and understand the fact. So those are the cognitive strategy, especially the deal with repetition is very, very important in learning a second language, because when you listen to any audiovisual material oftenly, you are paying exposed to the input, to the language input. So that is a very good thing to do. And now we go to the second one, that is metacognitive strategies. So metacognitive strategy is about the strategy, it is a strategies about learning. When we talk about cognitive strategy, we're talking about learning strategies. But when we move to cognitive, metacognitive strategies, then we talk about strategies about learning. So this is about the skill we use for planning, for monitoring, and for evaluating the learning activity. So as we need to know that to be aware of these metacognitive strategies and how we design the material, we integrate these metacognitive strategies in material design so that we can also ask the student, can help the student to use these metacognitive strategies. So planning, identify objective, determine how to achieve, self-monitoring, checking one's performance as someone speak, self-evaluations, right? Appraising one's performance in relation to one's own standard, self-reinforcement, rewarding oneself for success. Used to myself, I reinforce myself, reward myself. For example, like I say to myself, okay, you have done a good job, Henry. That is something I reward myself. So this is a kind of metacognitive strategies that I use in order to improve myself. Sometimes that you need to reward yourself of something that you are doing. So these are the metacognitive actions when we design the material. Like Pamade already talked about assessment and how do we integrate those assessments to be included, like use the checklist to evaluate the progress, etc. So assessment for learning, as Pamade mentioned earlier about in his presentation. So that is also very important to be included in the design. Okay, so next. So this is about online learning, and this is about the framework of community of inquiry. This is the framework that normally we use as the basis to develop online learning activities. So there are three elements here that we need to pay attention when it comes to design or to develop any online learning activity and to facilitate the online learning. So the first one is the social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. So these three elements are interrelationship. There are interdependence on one another in order for the online learning to be successful. So social presence here is related to establishing the students' engagement, communications, right? That is the social presence. Cognitive presence is basically dealing with exploration, integrations with the activity that stimulates the student to do some exploration, to integrate what they already know with the new knowledge in order to come to the last one is the resolution. That is deal with applying new idea. So, and then the next one is, it is dealing with designs and organizations of the materials, facilitating this course, facilitating the online learning. In this case, how do we interact with the students related to the tasks that we provide to them include the instructions. So of all these three elements that I present here, teaching presents very crucial ones. Teaching presents. This is related to the designs and organizations of the materials. So we need to pay attention to the teaching presents here and how do we facilitate these materials online. Because the teaching presentations, yeah, the way we organize the material, we at the one point influence the cognitive presence that we expect the students should have in this online learning, yeah, through the project that we provide to them, through the discussions that we give to them, to any task that we provide online for them to engage. We expect that the cognitive presence should be there, that the critical thinking should be there. So the critical thinking, in order for the student to think critically, it will be depend on the teaching presence, on the designs and organizations of the materials. And as well as it will also depend on the social presence. So the social presence here is like the open communications that we normally build. Sometimes we build through a WhatsApp group. We create the groups there, right? And everyone is like support one another when it comes to the task that we provide for the students. So it is like the interactions, and the interactions between the community, between the group, it should be like in the form of support one another, free rich expression. When Pamade talk about netiquette, so it is very important that when we are involved in any communication, make sure that this communication is a free risk. It's a risk free. Means that there is not something like a threat, use bad language in the communication, but instead we support one another. So that is a social presence. How do we interact with one another when it comes to learning or to developing your knowledge, yes. And yes, and the cognitive presence here is basically the target that we want that every single task that we provide to students, at least there should be that the student need to do some explorations, more explore about the task or the topic. They integrate new knowledge into what they already know in order to come to something new that we regard it as a resolution. Resolution related to applying new idea. So that is something that we need to pay attention when it comes to online learning, especially related to developing students' autonomous learning. Okay, so that is the three elements that is normally built as the basis when it comes to design online learning or online teaching. Okay, so let's move. This is the very important one, that in online learning, so there is a three interactions that occur. So the first is the interactions between the students. Suppose that this picture here, this gentleman is a student. So the successful of the online learning is depend on the three elements, three interactions. So the interactions between student and students, within the community groups, that is what we call it social presence, interaction between student and student, interaction between student and the content, which is sometimes we use Google Classroom as the learning management, Canvas, or Pattimura University is our online learning platform, which is e-learning Universitas Pattimura. So this is where we place all the content. So the interaction between student and the content is also very important, as well as the interaction between the student with the instructor or the lecturer of the course. So maintain these three interaction, these three model of interaction will be guaranteed you're successful in online learning. So make sure the students that you need to maintain these three interactions. Your interaction between you and your community, your group, your interaction between you and the lecturers or your instructor, and the interaction between you and the content. That's normally available in a learning management system such as Google Classroom or Canvas and others. So that is the online, the importance of the maintaining online interaction, which is related to your engagement with the content materials. Okay, so this is the teaching presence that I talked previously. It's play a very important role here. So normally, when it comes to online learning, Pa Made already mentioned it, and then we use these two different platforms, these two different models, a synchronous model and a synchronous model, which is normally we use a synchronous model. We create the activity using learning management system, whether it is Google Classroom, Canvas, Edmodo, and many more, or Schoology, and many more. But this is actually, when it comes to these two different models, or these two different platforms, synchronous model, we normally use Zoom or Google Meet for the synchronous model. So this is related to the activity when it comes to these two different models. In the synchronous model, or when the activity, we design the activity using learning management system. So these are normally the activity, these are normally the activity that we design. So first is like, okay, we have the orientations of the course, and then we come to the activity. So the activity that we normally have is like read. Sometimes this is related to the web articles, read a web article, or short reading passage, and discussion. This is the activity, read and discussion task activity. We post the video, and we have the student to watch the video, and then they discuss the content of the video. So watch and discussion. There is also another activity that can possibly created using any kind of learning management system, such as read, whether it is related to the web article or short reading passage, and then complete the quiz. And then we have the assignment. So there could be different assignments, such as essay writing, creating a lesson plan, or creating video lesson, and so on and so on. So that is the activity that normally we can design in any learning management system. That is the synchronous model. But then we have another activity that we can use using synchronous model in Zoom or Google Meet. What I normally do, I use this Zoom and Google Meet only for presentations, discussions, and clarification. So it is very important that we need to develop activity that we can use using Google Meet or Zoom in this synchronous model, because sometimes students complain a little bit about hours or time we spend using this Zoom or Google Meet. to present the material. Like at the beginning of the PAMADE presentations, when PAMADE conduct a mini survey using Mentimeter, and most people express the challenge like it is passive, one-way interaction, boring. So make sure that how do we we need to define what we're going to do when it comes to synchronous model, or when it comes to use Zoom or Google Meet. So I normally use Zoom for presentations, discussions, and clarifications. And it's normally I spend between 30 to 45 minutes. The rest, I direct the student to go to learning management system that I already create for them to engage with the task there. Something that they need to ask, we bring them to the Zoom meeting. That is for clarification, so that try to avoid boring situations or something like that. Except for the if students have their presentations, then I can keep using this Zoom meeting for 1.5 hours or 2 hours, for just in case if student use this for presentation, if we have the student presentations or group presentations. So that's the things that I want to like to tell, to share with you on how we use these two models, synchronous and asynchronous model. The next is, as I like to use, design the material in as an instructional model to design the activity. So I use this project-based learning model to design the activity, to design online learning activities. So in learning management system, like for example, I use Canvas. So what I have in learning management system is project. I start with the project, goal and objective and assessment. So this is like the project orientations. I start with it first, and then I move to provide modeling, and then gives also, there is a space or saves one page for discussions. And then for the Zoom or Google Meet, we discuss about topic selections. Like I integrate, ask the student about their own topic. I use this Zoom or Google Meet for presentations, for having the student to do their presentation and report their progress. That I do in a Zoom meeting with the student. And at the same time, when the student do the presentation or report their progress using the Zoom, they do a reflection, self-reflection. They monitor their or evaluate their progress. This is the metacognitive that we expect to be occur or to appear in online learning in order to develop their autonomy, students' autonomy. So that is what, when we're talking about developing students' autonomy in online learning. So then still, they can use Zoom to do the presentations. When they do the presentations on the project related to the report the progress of the project, that is the time when the student reflects on their progress. So the input, the feedback that the student or the group receive from the audience will become something for them to do in case that they need to do more to improve do more investigation, then they go back to internet, explore, integrate more data or more information in order to improve their performance. Before they come to the last one is to submit. So it's normally everything's like the assignment they submit in learning management system, but that is the last student go through all this process. Last one, then they submit the final project. So that is the way I shape their autonomy to make them to be an autonomous learning. And this is my model, basically. So this is about scaffold learner autonomy. This is my model. This is basically my model as I show you previously. So normally I provide model. So when I provide model, I also direct the student to the goal and the objective that I provide at the beginning of the lesson. And then I give them some choice. Give them some choice that's related to the topic that they're interested to do. I emphasize on novelty when it comes to the selections of the topic or the project that the student intend to do. I emphasize on novelty. So I like them to produce something new, something that they cannot find in internet, for example. So basically it is something come from their own experience, basically. That is when I maintain the novelty, because that is a very important one. I also emphasize on authenticity. This is why I create learning environment and community practice to keep the project authentic to the students. Role and responsibility is a very important one, because when we want to develop their autonomy, we want to make sure that everyone, if it is a group work, everyone should do something in the group, should contribute something to the project. So that is related to the role and responsibility, and we need to define role and responsibility so that every single student, if it is a group work or a group project, they can contribute to the project. And we need to check their contributions as well. And then standard setting, that they have to work based on the standard that we have developed together with the student. At the beginning, I always show them the assessment. So that is the standard that we are all work together to meet that standard. And in order to meet that standard, this is what we need to do. Reflections, self-monitoring, and self-evaluation. So the student have to monitor, they have to evaluate their performance in order to meet the standard that we are set together. So that is how I scaffold learner autonomy. In order to develop to make them to be an autonomous learner. Okay, so this is an example of what I done with my student. This is, for example, this for my first semester student, like they have the a project, a storytelling project. But as I mentioned before, that scaffolding is very important, modeling is very important, and how do we scaffold the activity so that the student, to enable them to do this project well as we expect. So this is like something that I provide. This is a graphic organizer. I provide this with the student to model them with the student, and this is the result, basically. So I'm going to show you, this is the result. Oh, sorry. With my first semester students. Okay, so to make it more authentic, we create a context so that the storyteller tell the story to the to the audience to make it like a real one. So this is how we create with the first semester students. And the next activity that I have also with the first semester student is public opinion. So this is basically an interview. I see in Pamade presentations that normally we engage the student by asking them some questions. So this is something that I come up with in order to provide model to the student. So like I show them the video of public interview, and I create some questions, some guided questions that when students watch the video, they have to pay attention to the some information or the to the some information or to the structures. For example, like how is the interview conducted? How is the case introduced to public? How does the interviewer approach someone in public? So this is like I provide them basically with the cognitive strategies that they can use this strategy when they look at the video. This is the strategies that they can employ to be an autonomous learning. So this is the example of the activity, video activity from the students. What do they think about social media?
Hi, I'm Rani. Today we are going around asking people what they think about social media. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Amelia. I am a student of Hello, my name is Stephanie and I'm a student of English Education Study Program.
My name is Shakira. I'm Veronica and I'm from English Education Study Program. What do you think about social media?
According to me, social media is a medium where we share our opinion, share information, and also our experiences there. Media where we can connect to other people all around the world, just like that.
Do you have social media?
I also use one.
I have Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp.
Okay, so that is about, this is the project that I designed, and this is the results. And I have another project with the students. This is the interview project, and this is how I scaffold this project with the student by asking them some, showing them the model, but asking them some questions like this when it comes to this project. So, for example, like what topic are normally brought to the show? What is the, how is the show conducted? What is the role of the host? What is the role of the speaker? What makes the talk dynamic or interesting? So students go through these questions, they watch the video, go through this, went through all these questions, reflect on these questions, and they create ours one. So this is the example of what they make. Okay, this is another one which is similar. Okay, this is just an example. With the same model, this is another project that I have with the students. This is the Tech Talk and Mini Research Project. So how I model this project with the students when it comes to, for example, like Tech Talk project. So I show them the video and create some questions for them to reflect when they watch the video as the model. For example, like the questions, for example, like what makes his or her speech interesting? How does he or she start the speech? Is there any illustrations used by the speaker? How the speaker hook the audience? What message, etc. So students look at this video and reflect on the questions and they create their own. Well, we went through all this process and this is they come with the final one from one of the students. This is about Tech Talk video, Tech Talk project. So So that is the TED Talk, for example. And this is another one project. Is a mini research. And the same thing is like I always start with provide them the model with some questions for them to look. Excuse me. Yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are in the book tree, and we will present to you all about our main research on society's perspective on fake news on classes and how to prevent fake news from classes itself. Now we're going to start with the background information. Ladies and gentlemen, studies on Harvard University show that we, at least one to two times in our lives, ever hear fake news or classes. I personally think that I heard tons of classes for fake news, and I can guarantee that we all have heard of it. Back in 2019, 26 September, Apple was treated by enormous earthquake that
Okay, that is just an example to show you. So, okay, this is another activity. I use add puzzles and I create some guided questions and having the student to watch on the video available, I create an add puzzle and they use that video to retell the content of the video to the audience, like to say to the audience what they know or what video, what the content of the video that they have they watch and they learn from that video. So that is something that that the student have to tell, but then I have to do to give them some guided questions to help them deal with this task. So this is just an example, show you the example.
Film bagaimana?
Okay, so that is the examples of the activity that I have with my students. And now this is about learner autonomy in online learning. So this is what I explore from the students about how they develop their autonomy. So the first thing is like they use English search engine to explore information. They're also seeking advice from a variety of sources, online sources, using variety of ESL websites like English Central, BBC Radio, YouTube, reading articles from English online magazines, connecting, chatting with the fellow student, reflecting on strengths and weaknesses, initiating learning based on reflections, planning and organizing self-directed learning time. So are the things that the student do when it deal with developing their autonomy. So next I move to some technology that can possibly used by the teachers, or we introduce this technology to help students developing their autonomy. So there are some nice apps like already been introduced by Pamade earlier, but I want to just draw their attention to some that I have here. It's normally like we all use smartphones, and we know that smartphone has memory capacity to store photo, music, video, and to download listening materials or reading materials. So this smartphone or mobile phone, we can make use of this for improve our knowledge, or especially English. So, for examples, like for listening, English Central. This website here have quite a lot of video with activities that the students can use this website, right, to develop their English. Especially, it is good when they're being exposed to listen to different content for developing their vocabulary. If you look here, that in English Central, they have the video related to the business, media, social, travels, and many more. Academic video for the kids. So when students exposed to this different kind of video materials, they can develop their vocabulary, develop their knowledge, develop, as well as of course, their English. And here is a very important, I also put here cognitive and metacognitive strategies. So when it comes for you to student to listen to the different content of the video that available in English Central, make sure that they use the cognitive strategies, means that they listen again and again until they store the information in the brain. And it might not use, that information might not use, it's only be used when it is necessary. So that is a very good thing to do. At Puzzle, there are also a lot of video from YouTube and other channels in Edpuzzle, and there's also activity in Edpuzzle that the student can go there to develop their listening skill to the different content or materials that are available in this website. The next one is natural reader. This is also a good thing for the student to do when they go to natural readers. For example, they can. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, but you are running out of time, so maybe
okay.
you can sum up everything in just
so
1 minute.
Thank you, Enrique. So this is natural readers. I want to show you. And then for the reading activity, you go to the talkingbook.com. This you get the material for improving your reading. There's a website, a lot of websites that can take you to get the online English reading materials. This is Redline, which is also very good one for you to develop your reading as well as listening. I'm going to show you that this web reading also provide you with translations. For example, like if you don't know any word, the meaning of the word, you can just click on the word and it provides you with the Indonesian translation. So that is the read length. For writing, Grammarly.com. This is, for example, if you are afraid of whether you write your grammar correctly, go to Grammarly.com to check your grammar, which is good. Answer the public. This is what I also use for brainstorming when I'm going to talk about autonomous learning. I use answer the public to help me develop my idea, opinion about what I'm going to say about. So this is also good for when it comes to writing. You can use that answer the public as like graphic organizers to get the idea. Quidball, this is for paraphrasing. You can see this difference here. I'm just going to show you, for example, if you go to the Quidball paraphrasing, like you change the word opportunity with possibility, something like accepted here, change with acknowledge. So this is good for improving your vocabulary, looking for the alternative to say something without digress from the meaning. And that's it. And lastly, e-portfolio, go to the Google site to create e-portfolio, because this is what I use with my students. I use Google Site for the student to create e-portfolio, and then I can collaborate with the student to improve their language and the language, and as well as the layout, for example. So this is just an example that some of the tools that can help students developing their autonomy. So I think that's all, Henry. This is the response. So thank you so much. That's it. Thank you, Henry. Back to you.
Thank you, Pak Hen, for sharing with us. So next we will proceed to the question and answer sessions. And for these sessions, as we previously mentioned, that you may allow to send your questions in the chat box. And so far, we already have one question coming from Shamsia Taro. So as we are waiting for maybe other participants to give their questions, I would like to read the questions that have been given by Shamsia Taro. And this question is for Pak Madi. So Pak Madi, I will just read the questions that Shamsia send on the chat box for you to answer. Is that okay, Pak Madi?
Yes, Pak Henry.
Yes. So Shamsia was asking about, as you were explaining about the presentation, in terms of teaching, we have, as teachers, we have to teach students first and then allow them to have practice later. But however, what happens was students tend to copy and paste what they found as a means to solving their tasks. So the question is, does the online learning only accommodate the autonomous learning merely for transferring knowledge and not to educate them?
Thank you very much, Pak Henry, and also Bu Samsia for answering this very good question. Basically, I will just share my ideas and thoughts, and Pak Henry can also respond to this and add, yeah, of course, yeah, because this is a learning process. Uh, what you have asked actually, Bu Samsia, happens a lot. And what we presented, Pak Henry presentation was very good, insightful, and adding a lot of things, yeah, from what I shared just now. Happens a lot. So one key that you can do to avoid students having similar answer or not having a process rather than just jumping into products is you have to uh, differentiate students creating project and project-based learning. So this is one of the ways to promote autonomy and also avoid copy-paste and so on. When students create projects, they will jump into the products very soon. It is very teacher-centered, and students probably do not engage a lot and understand a lot about the content. But in PBL or project-based learning, it is very student-centered. Teachers will be the facilitators only, and then you will guide them as what Pak Hendrik mentioned and showed in the examples, very good examples. I did a lot of this also, Pak Hendrik, and then I'm happy that you also do that. And it seems that we are similar in a way. Yeah? Go back to this, when you do project-based learning, you guide the students and you are not dominant. And then to avoid copy and paste, you have to make the task or the question or the project open and personalized. For example, rather than asking, for example, multiple choice questions or an essay question but with one answer, for example, who is the first president of Indonesia? Then the smartest kid will answer Sukarno and then the discussion will end, or the other students will copy and paste. Rather, you can ask, what do you like from the first president of Indonesia? So this brings about open-ended capacity and opportunities, and then it is personalized because it is according to them. Yeah, so this is one of the ways, and you can use technologies as what Hendrik showed just now. Redlang is very good, voice thread, so many, but again, they are only tools. You use it based on what you need, and then also based on what your situation. Again, so go back to your learning objective and then give the most opportunities for the students to learn with your facilitation. Thank you. I think that's all. Pak Henry probably want to add something. Thank you, Pak Henry and Bu Samsia.
What is the question, Hendrik?
The question during Pak Made presentation, Pak Made give emphasis on how teachers should teach their students first and then allow them to practice. But however, what happened was most of the students are only copy and paste what they have from Google as means to solve the tasks. So what Ibu Samsia was asking is, does that online learning only accommodate autonomous learning merely for transferring knowledge and not to educate students?
Yeah. Yeah, as I say that scaffold is very important part of the process, and I like to focus on originality basically. So in order to come up with what the student have, is like Pamade mentioned about personalized learning. This is what we want to come up with. What the students have is we need to collaborate basically with the students, collaborate with the student, asking them what they have, or what the task, or what they want to do, what they like. I mean, it's like we need to talk and collaborate with the students basically. That is what I normally do when it comes to the project. I always like to collaborate with you, asking you what you want to do, what is the something like it's come from you, because I more emphasized on on your own, right? On your own, on the something that is yours, right? What I that is what I think it's just to be, yeah. Okay, Andy, that's it.
I agree to that. Yeah, it's very student centered what Pa Hendrik shared just now.
It's collaboration.
I also did collaboration a lot, facilitating a lot, and guiding a lot. But of course, you need to be there when you need to confirm something. For example, you allow them to be creative. I also do a lot of projects. If it is project, for example, creating big book, storybook at the moment, it takes some time. Infographics project for a book and a lot of things using ICTs because that's also my subjects. But then if you don't want to use projects, you can also have tests. But the test should provide opportunities for them to reflect, ya Ibu ya, and to put what they understood in a different context. Jadi nanti pertanyaannya is not only recalling information, but scaffolding is good. You can start with recalling information, but then you can ask, for example, if you teach about the role of technologies in the 21st century. So you can give them materials, videos, reading text with guided questions. You can ask them questions which is recalling their understanding about 21st century, technologies in the 21st centuries, but then you can ask one more question, which is open and personalized and original. For example, if you are a teacher, how are you going to implement technologies in reading class? That question will bring different answers. Yeah, if they understand, they will do it. If you want to create a video project, then the outcomes will be video. Yeah, depending on the tasks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Made, Pak Hen. We also have several questions that already been submitted when we open the registration. So maybe I'll just add one more question for Pak Made and Pak Hen for we to discuss one more. So the question is, can the students meet the expected outcome during from the curriculum during this online learning process? I mean, this is one of the questions that you can ask from the participants.
Yeah,
maybe I will. Yeah, maybe Pak N.
What is the question, Henry?
Yeah, can students meet the required expectations from the curriculum during this learning process?
Can students meet the required expectations?
Yeah, expected outcome.
Expectation.
Yeah, from the curriculum during learning process.
I think this is something that we are work together with the student, right? So it is very important at the beginning of the lessons that we need to show an objective, even if possible, the assessment. We have to set the standard. We get to the standard that we set together. That is something that everyone should know, and that we need to work together in order to achieve the standard that we already set together with the student. So it's working with the student, involve them is a good thing to achieve what we expect, because we need to involve the students. So that is sometimes I like to do, and normally I do through Zoom with them. With the meeting Zoom, I told the student what I expect with the project. So we discuss together. If something not clear, we discuss to clarify these things, any problem. And then I have the student to do the presentations, at least check any feedback from the student, something normally is like something good and something that needs to be improved. that is how we reflect on the ending of the student's presentation. And then when I normally like when the student do the presentations, it's like we need to pay attention, we need to provide feedback. And the feedback deals with once something that is good, and another one is something that needs to be improved. At least everyone draw their attentions on this. So then we work with what needs to be improved together in order to achieve the expectation. So working together with the student, presentation, feedback is always good. I think that is something we need to do in order that we can achieve the standard, the target. Am I answer the questions or?
I think so, Pak Hendrik.
Am
It's
I
a good
answer the
one.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, just it's a good one. I think so. Just to add more,
Yes.
just to add more, Pak Henry and Pak Hendrik. Yes and no. The question, I think the answer can be answered yes and no. First, of course, you have to go for yes. When you look, there should be learning outcomes there. Then, as a teacher, your job is to make sure your students achieve the learning outcomes. Then you start with what Pak Hendrik said, mentioned just now. You design the materials, collaboration, projects, and so on. You are working together with students, students working together with themselves, and so on and so on, with the content also, and so on and so on. But then there should be process, and at the end, there should be reflection. I agree to that one. This is the no part. You probably do not achieve the learning outcomes, and then it is your job to reflect. What you need to do when reflecting? You have to reflect what has been good. Pay attention to my last slide. What has been good in my learning? What can be improved, as Pak Henry mentioned just now. And regarding with pandemic, there is a new curriculum term introduced. The name is curriculum darurat, meaning that you don't have to do everything, Ibu Bapak. You just focus on what is very important for your students to achieve during this time. That is curriculum darurat. But again, the process must be meaningful, and then there should be a reflection at the end. I think that's what I can add from Pak. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Made, Pak Hen. So for Firda, the question is for both Pak Hen and Pak Made. Firda is asking, is it always effective to teach students with learning ways that you already mentioned before?
An honest answer, I think, Pak Hendrik, if I can start, an honest answer, no, not always. Not always, to be honest. So I already gave webinars a lot from the beginning of pandemic to different parts of Indonesia. So in big cities, in remote areas. So I told them some things like this. So sometimes when I teach my students, it doesn't work. That is the part that I mentioned just now as reflection, ya Pak Hendrik, ya. So you need to reflect. And also a concept. Are you familiar with post-method pedagogy and eclecticism, Ibu Firda? Yeah. So these two methods, post-method pedagogy is by Kumara Dibelu. So meaning that there is no single method that is the best for every situation. So that's why you have to combine relevant, meaningful, effective methods for a particular situation. This is called eclectic method, Ibu Firda. So I think that's what I can comment on that one. Pak Hendrik?
Yeah, maybe next from Pak Hen, if you want to add something really quick to summarize, before we closing our question and answering session for today's webinar, Pak Hen.
Okay, what is it about?
It's in the chat.
Firda was asking Pak Hen, is it always effective to teach students with learning learning ways or learning strategies that you've already mentioned before? Your quick answer for that.
Yeah, we have to teach the learning strategy to students, right? And it have to. We have to teach this strategy to them. And the way we teach this strategy is it is in the design in the design in how we design the teaching itself, that we have to include this strategy, and it should be taught to the students, right? They have to know that strategy, because that strategies will help them coping with the problems. Metacognitive strategy, for example, like most students are not aware of how they organize. Yeah, they use the organization, reflect what to reflect, how to reflect. That is something that we have to include in the teaching, and we have to let them know. We have to teach them how to use that for their own benefit. I think it have to be doing. So that's why we use a lot of like reflection, teach them how to reflect, what to reflect, right? Component, element, what they need to reflect. They need to reflect on this. So that is how we tell them, right? So that is good for them when it comes to do something similar. They can employ the same strategy for their own. But it should be start from us as a teacher to show them what to do and how to do it. It should be start from us as a teacher, what to do, how to do it, and then next time they can use the same strategy for their own. Let them do it. I think that is what I want to say. Yeah. So strategy is always good. Learning strategy. What do you mean? That's it, Andy?
Yes, okay, Pak Hen,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Pak Hen. Pak Made, before we're going to the closing, I just want to ask you to give your closing statement for this webinar. So maybe we will go with Pak Made first. Can you give your short closing statement for today's webinar?
Yes,
Pak Made.
thank you, Pak Hendrik. Thank you, Pak Henry, Pak Hendrik, for very interesting presentation and sharing actually here. I just would like to conclude first what we learned today and also respond to what learning is actually. So one sentence, completing is not the same as learning. So when you learn, you do not aim only to complete the materials. So aim for learning with whatever concepts that you are looking for: constructivism, connectivism, autonomous learning, metacognitive, and so on and so on. So that's what I can share for my final statement for my friends here in Unpakti. And the next, I would like to thank Pak Carol and his team in Pasca, and also everyone who attended this webinar. The last, I would like to say sorry if there are some lacks and mistakes. I'm happy if you email me after this. Thank you very much, Pak Henry.
Thank you very much, Pak Made. Pak Hen, closing statement from you, Pak Hen.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Hendrik. I want to say to everyone here that learning is a process and mistake is a part of the mistake. We cannot escape from the mistake, but we need to learn from the mistake that we made, because the lesson is there. Learning is there when we make the mistake. And take the risk, explore a lot, take the risk. Don't be afraid of any new technology, but you can explore as much as possible of the new technology and our benefit. That is a good thing to do. And what else that I want to say is that yes, I think that's all. Sometimes it's here, but then it's escape very fast. But That is what I want to say. Is just thinking that learning is a part of the process and mistake is a part of the learning. Making mistake is normal. Don't afraid of making mistake. But when you quit your learning, that is the big mistake that you made. Don't stop learning. When you stop learning, that is the big mistake that you make. So make sure you are not supposed to, what is it? When we reach a certain target, we tend to fossilize everything, fossilize the language. Even when you reach the certain target, not try to fossilize everything, but keep on learning because everything is always new knowledge. We are still encounter something new and we need to learn more. So that's all I think, Henry. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you, Pamade, for sharing your knowledge with us. I'm really appreciate. I'm happy to meet you and to be with you in these presentations. And thank you so much, Pak Carol, also for inviting me for doing this presentation. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining your for joining this in this web seminar with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pahen, Made, for your kind remarks. And then we're going to finish our question and answer in this time, and then we will proceed to the closing. So I will give it back to our Master of Ceremony, Bella.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, we had done our parallel session with an extraordinary presentation from our two respected speakers, Mr. Made and also Mr. Henry. Now our event has come to an end, but before that, I would like to invite the head of postgraduate English education, Professor Dr. Carolis Anatototi, to close this event officially. Time.
Is yours.
Well, thank you, Bella. I think when you misspell something, it's a prayer. So when you say professor, I might be one day. Well, actually, I'm an associate professor already. Thank you, Bella. Okay, it was so awesome, wonderful. Yeah, this webinar today. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Well, let's praise the Lord God Almighty for His mercy that it is finally time to end the webinar today. We are so lucky to have both speakers in this webinar because what we have learned actually are the most important lessons or knowledge for us in this situation. Yeah. So as about teachers and lecturers and students, actually we are also grateful for both, yeah, Pak Made and Pak Henry, yeah. It is my hope and of course our hope that through this seminar or webinar, all participants, especially students, have possessed or gotten some knowledge and inspiration to manage their way of learning in the new normal. And for lecturers, I hope that you have more insights for designing your online teaching. Yeah, to tell you frankly that some of us still struggling with this kind of tools, yeah, this kind of platforms. It takes time. Yeah, well, my earlier conversation with the director, I mentioned that we have to thank this in quotation mark. We have to thank the pandemic, yeah, COVID-19. Otherwise, some of us might not even think of how to teach online. Yeah. So there is, yeah, positive even though there is also negative aspects of the COVID. Yeah. Okay, so I would like to thank all the wonderful people who have shared their knowledge and expertise in this webinar. Professor Alex Retraukun, MSc, and also Pak Made Heri Santosa, PhD, and Dr. Hendrik Maruana, MIT. You are all wonderful. Yeah, we wish to have more seminar like this. Yeah, because actually your expertise is now booming. Yeah, in this situation. Yeah, you're on the peak of your expertise now. Yeah, and so actually all of you taking time out of your personal and professional schedule really means a world, to us, because like Pak Made, you are so busy, with your task in Bali, in Undiska, but you can share your time with us in Unpati. Actually, we need your knowledge, we need your expertise, your competency for us here. So I heard we are going to have another seminar for the S1. We hope that we'll see you again on December. Yeah.
Yes.
And all participants, yes. All the participants here, maybe you, of course, you have to join our next webinar. Yeah. I also have to all participants, students, lecturers, masters of ceremony, moderator, and admin staffs of the study program. Thank you so much for your patience and cooperation. I'm sure what we all do today will give positive impact for personal development for everyone attending this webinar. Therefore, thank you all again, and may you be blessed with happiness and joy. I therefore, without wasting any time, I officially close this webinar. I hope to see you again next webinar, and God bless you all. Thank you so much. Thank you Pak Made.
Thank you, Pak Karol dan Ibu Bapak.
I think that's all, Bella. Thank you, Pak Made. And I will give back to you, Bella. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real end of our webinar today. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to extend my warm thank you to distinguished guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, for giving your honor, participation, and contribution in today's webinar. Thank you so much, and see you in the next webinar.
Thank you, Pak Carol, Pak Made.
Thank you.
Pak Carol, Pak Made.
Thank you so much.